Hello there, welcome to Philbert Flies, and this is another Philbert Flies review. Today we're looking at LatinVFR's Miami scenery for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and you join me on short final to runway 27 at Miami. We're just descending over the photogrammetry scenery of Miami itself, and it's all looking pretty good so far. I'm running everything at Ultra on a i7-8700K processor with a 1080 Ti GTX graphics card and 32 gigabytes of RAM. I'll complete my approach and then I will meet you again at the gate when we'll have a proper look around this scenery in different weather and lighting conditions, and I'll finish up by giving you my thoughts on it. Well, here we are at gate Delta 41. We're parked up and I've just requested the Jetway, so we'll have a look at that in action. And that, my friends, is as close as the Jetway gets. Now, I haven't tried every position at this airport, but I've tried 4. And this is the end result of all of the Jetway docking systems. So that's not great. I'm aware that there's a SDK limitation. There's not much documentation in how to program the Jetways, but other developers have done a better job by trial and error than this. You'll also notice that that the Jetways are default models. They aren't custom built. If you have a look at photos of Miami Airport, they don't look like this. They mostly have HSBC advertising on. So that's the first negative point. We'll move on now to have a look at some of the texturing around the terminals. The models themselves are pretty good. The texturing is not quite up to the standard of the best airports that you get for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Slightly low resolution when you get close. There are little pockets of transparent glass here and there, but by and large you've got these flat textures on the terminals. Let's have a look around the rest of the airport. So this is one of the nice features. You've got this little transit train running between different bits of the airport. This, I believe, is the international pier. And that's quite a nice touch, quite nicely modelled. Now here's a Jetway that seems to be doing a better job of connecting. That's of course an AI aircraft, not our own. In fact, all the Jetways along here... Ah no, not all. So I think we can conclude from that some of the jetways work better than others, but they are not to be relied upon to connect to your aircraft. So again, quite nice modelling of this building here, but not such great texturing. If we move over and have a look at some of the landside areas, you will see that a lot less effort, as you would expect, has gone into these. But the roadway textures are very low resolution, and there are issues like this where one texture cuts off, another begins, the lines don't line up, so it doesn't look great at all. But like I've said in previous reviews, I'm not really that fussed about the landside areas because you see so little of them during normal operations. If you have a look over here, we've got cars parked, but the base texture seems to be very low resolution indeed. I suspect that's an issue with blending the FlyTemper scenery in with the Bing Maps base, but it's something I would have liked to have seen them put a little bit more effort into, probably. Let's go and have a quick nose around at some of the remote stands and the areas that you would perhaps encounter less often. I'm afraid I can't tell you whether these objects here are part of the default scenery or part of FlyTempers. I suspect they are FlyTempers, because I haven't seen Azure AI create fuel tanks like that before. And again, you've got the low resolution textures outside the airport fence. Moving on to the taxiway and runway textures, these are actually rather good. You can see you've got tyre marks, you've got different types of ground material, lines in the concrete. And if we get down nice and close, you can see that the resolution of these ground textures is really very good. You've also got texturing on the taxiway lines, which suggests a bit of wear and tear, and I like that a lot. If we move over to the runway, these two are quite nicely textured. In fact, I'd go so far as to say they're very nicely textured. They're probably not quite up to the standard of FlyTemper's ground textures, but this is a nice touch, you know, the arrows that have been scrubbed out and repainted, and so that's good. And again, you've got tyre marks and other little markings here and there, which all adds to the immersion of the scenery. We'll fly over here to what I presume is the cargo terminal, given that it's got DHL written on the side, or certainly one of the cargo terminals, and have a look at here. So if anything, the textures are even worse on this this particular building. Very low resolution indeed. And these red ground markings aren't great either. So here you have the control tower, which is nicely modelled. And it's even got weathered textures up here, which I quite like. They're not terribly high resolution, but how often are you going to get this close to a tower in normal operations? Not very, hopefully. And again, we've got this low-res, non-airside area down here. So this is what the airport looks like at sunset, and the materials used do reflect the sun rather nicely. And here you have the terminal at night time. Let's go down and take a closer look at some of the terminals. Now, the first thing you will no doubt notice is that they are very, very green looking. The second thing you'll probably notice is that these are flat bitmap textures, and they don't really, to me, say this is a terminal lit up at night time. This, to me, is quite an old scenery technique that was getting a little bit dated even in FSX. So to see these flat textures in Microsoft Flight Simulator is very disappointing. And yet more green over here. And again, mostly flat textures. Now over here you can see one of the few places where they have actually modelled an interior and put transparent glass in front of it. So it's not super exciting inside, it's just this very small area. There's nothing at the top of the escalator and there's nothing further back. But it's, you know, it's a token effort at interior modelling nonetheless. Could probably do with brightening up, I think, a little bit, and it certainly doesn't match with these flat green bitmap textures on the outside here. Having said all that, the apron lighting is actually pretty nice, and it does reflect what I've seen in real-world images of Miami Airport at night. The taxiways around the aprons are very dark. They've got no centerline markings or edgeline markings, so you'd better hope that your aircraft has decent lights on it if you're arriving here after sunset. Moving away from the apron, you'll notice that the main taxiways do have both centerline lights and edge lights, although the edge lights are somewhat sporadic. And the runways have decent centerline and edge lighting, as you'd expect in any Microsoft Flight Simulator airport. And here's Miami in the rain. You'll notice that the ground looks very similar to any airport in Microsoft Flight Simulator, with these small puddles generously scattered around the place. And it reflects the buildings, these light poles and everything else, as we've come to expect. And here's what Miami Airport looks like after some heavy snow. I quite like what they've done here, I must say. They've got some tyre marks in the snow. They've got certain areas that are covered more than others. So the stands have quite a heavy dusting. There's been some clearance of snow here, I would say, compared with other areas. Quite why they haven't cleared the stands to the same extent as the taxiways, I don't know. But it doesn't instantly strike me as looking out of place. Although the taxiways further away from the apron have been cleared somewhat better. The snow looks really good on the grass textures, and I like the fact that it's been cleared right away from the taxiway edge lines, but not all the way from all of the surfaces, which I'm sure would have been easier to model. The runways have a scattering of snow as well, like they've been cleared but not that recently. And overall, the snow effects here are pretty good. So I spent $17.99 on this product direct from LatinVFR's web shop. It's also available on Sim Market and the Microsoft Flight Simulator marketplace, so do compare prices before you buy. Am I pleased I bought it? Well, I've got mixed feelings, to be honest. I looked at the screenshots before buying and I was a little bit underwhelmed by them, but I thought, well, I do want a version of Miami in Microsoft Flight Simulator. It's a good base for exploring Central and South America, and also a good base for long-haul flights to Europe. Having installed it and having had a look around, I remained underwhelmed, to be honest with you. There are things I like and there are things I don't like, but overall, I think at this price point, there are better sceneries around. If you compare this with FS Dream Team's Chicago O'Hare or Flightbeam's Denver, or even some of the Orbex airports, it falls short. So what do I like? Well, I like the models of the buildings. As far as I can tell, it's an up-to-date representation of the airport. I think the ground texturing, by and large, is very good, including the snow textures we looked at a minute ago. And I think that the night lighting around the stands is very true to life and believable. The bad points, well, I hate the flat green textures on the terminal buildings at night. I'm not a huge fan of the building textures in general. I think they are noticeably worse than similar airports that have been released. I'm irritated that the Jetways don't connect to the aircraft. That's a big immersion killer. I know it's an SDK limitation, but other developers have tweaked and fiddled around until they've got the Jetways working and connecting, at least within a few centimetres. The landside areas of this airport are very low resolution, as we saw, with some strange lines in between bits of roadway which don't look great, so that's not ideal. There's a certain lack of taxiway centerline and edge lights around the apron at night time, which makes it feel slightly too dark and hard to navigate. And finally, it just doesn't feel like you're there in the same way that, for example, Fly Tampa's Copenhagen or FS Dream Team's Chicago O'Hare do. So I would say if Miami is an airport that you fly to or from a lot, you're going to want an add-on for it to make it look better than the default. And LatinVFR certainly provide that in this scenery. However, if you're just looking for a really good airport somewhere in the world that really shows off the best of what Microsoft Flight Simulator has to offer, this isn't it. And to be honest, I think $17.99 is on the high side for the quality of this scenery. And that's all I've got to say on the matter. I hope you found this review useful. If you have, please do like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.